Okay, we must be logged in then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are we live? All right, I'm going to go live on TikTok. Okay, if you could give me a thumbs up just to let me know that you could hear me, that would be great. All right, we are live on TikTok now. All right, I am Reverend Christina Del Rey, astrologer with the Ivy Psychic League, and this is Roots Revival Interfaith Sunday Service, and I am here with Reverend Danny Johnson, numerologist, and Reverend Ivy Rivera won't be joining us tonight. And here at Roots Revival Interfaith, we focus on normalizing intuition. We use the tools, natural tools such as astrology, numerology, and psychic mediumship. Okay. Wanted to ask for anybody who has any comments, feel free to comment while we talk. We will try to get to any questions that we can. Tonight, we are talking about moving on. There's a lot of astrology that's going on right now, and it's very intense. This is an intense month. This is an intense week. And a lot of people are having to move on from something that maybe they thought in their life was a constant. And it's really, as a collective, we are trying to level up. And that's why things keep happening. And we have to, continue to follow what spirit wants us to follow. So moving on is one of the hardest things that we have to do in life, probably. And we often have to get comfortable with facing that all things come to an end, good or bad. So the realization that all things come to an end should really force us to be more in the moment and enjoy our lives, especially when things are really good. You want to be more in that moment because, and I can remember, just as a side note, I can remember my daughter playing school on the couch, and she would have all her stuffed animals lined up, and she would give them pen and paper, and she would be teaching them. And I remember just sitting there watching it and really enjoying it, just because I knew at some point that stage was going to be over. And she would move on to be a teenager, and, she doesn't really play school anymore. And of course, you record it and things like that, but there's something to be said for just being in that moment and enjoying that and just having that experience. And every time one of my daughters left a stage, it was always like a mourning type of situation. But that's life. It's constant change, and we hate that. I still don't like it, but I have to accept it because we are human, and that is part of the human experience. So sometimes it's hard to see, but it is very hard to move on in a situation where somebody is leaving your life. So we could be talking about a divorce, the end of a friendship. We could be talking about the end of a job, a friendship group maybe that you had, maybe a home that you had. Maybe you have to move somewhere else. But it's like we have to remember that we have to embrace it. When we are moving on from something, especially a bad situation that maybe went toxic, we have to require to have firm boundaries. You really have to have firm boundaries when you're moving on. Let's say that you're in a romantic situation, and you have to make it official. We're broken up, and don't let that person have one foot in your life and one foot out of your life, or don't you have one foot in and one foot out. It should be all 2 feet in, 2 feet out. There's no in between when you're moving on. And people, especially in romantic relationships, get really, really tied down. They get really confused because it is confusing. One minute you think you want to move on, the next minute you're like, oh, but it's so safe here. And you go back and forth and you vacillate. At least that's how I am. I vacillate back and forth. But when you are making a move and you are making it official, change passwords, cut ties, names, accounts, etc. Later down the road, when you're in a better place, if a friendship happens organically with that person, that's fine. But right now you can't be friends. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying how, the person that was moving out of their house still had half of their stuff there. And I was like, no. You say, okay, by this date, you have it out or it's on the curb. That's the person's way of manipulating you. I'm still 1 foot in, you can't get on with your life and I'm manipulating you. No. And unfortunately, especially breakups, and that could be friendships, romantic breakups, whatever, those things have to be cut off. There have to be firm boundaries on that. So, years down the road, maybe a friendship, or an acquaintance with this person, but that time is not now. I went through a very painful divorce. The person would not leave. It created trauma and havoc for everybody in the house. It's not okay. Firm boundaries. Try to move on. Otherwise, you're just hurting people. It's not, it doesn't work. And you're going to waste so much time, so much valuable time that, you could have going on to the next stage in your life. And yet you're sitting here vacillating back and forth, and you're allowing a person to be half in and half out. No, boundaries are key. And cycles, we have to remember that cycles end, and this shows up in astrology. So pay attention to your astrology. Cycles end so that something new can move in. And this is really difficult to remember when you're going through it, because you're like, okay, I had this marriage, and, I once had this dream and it was going to be great. And now it's not. So you're like, you feel sad about it. And we just have to remember that we have to trust the unknown. We have to trust that what's coming in for us is the best for us. And it's for our highest good. Don't try to control what comes next either, because what comes next has to be from spirit. It has to be organic. It can't be something that you're trying to control. So many of us want to control everything, and that, that doesn't work either. I have a lot of friends that try to control. It doesn't work. You have to see what the universe brings you, and then you have to make decisions on how you're going to work with that energy. But don't rush it either. Have faith in the unknown. Pay attention to the signs that your spirit guides give you. And also, too, when you're going through something where you have to move on, some kind of break, we've named all the things, but, especially if it's a breakup, give yourself grieving time, but set a limit. And I set a limit for myself, an hour a day. You can stalk, you can, feel sad, cry for an hour a day. And then you're going to focus on something else. And then maybe that hour goes to 45 minutes, and then maybe it goes to a half hour, and it gets smaller and smaller. And then all of a sudden, you're not worried about it anymore. It's done. But you want to go towards something that feeds your soul, that makes you feel good, that gives you faith. For me, it was listening to books on meditation. It was listening to spiritual books. But that's not for everybody. Everybody has their own way to feel better. So you go towards that. And you give yourself that little bit of time to grieve. And one of the things that I always remember too is that, like, when you're in the most pain, you're having a really hard moment. And, it's almost like you have a moment where you're trying to move on from something and you can't even breathe because it's so painful. You have to think to yourself, this moment right here is rock bottom. This is the worst it's going to get for me. This is the lowest point of how I can feel. And then, believe it or not, that moment passes. But you have to remember to remind yourself that the moment passes. Because a lot of times I do forget, like that painful moment will be there and I'll be like, I feel horrible. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is as bad as it's going to get. It's going to move out, and, spirit's going to come, I'm going to be able to feel spirit come back in, and I'm going to be able to proceed from there. So that is really something very important to remind yourself about. Try to remember that the soul needs to move on. So if you go against, so a lot of times it's time to move on. All the signs are there. The person has told you they're moving on, or the situation, the job has ended, whatever, but you're still hanging on. You're like, no, I know I can fix it. Just give me a chance. And no, that will go against your soul contract. Your soul is saying it needs to move on. And if you don't, and you try to control it, you're going to make it so much harder on yourself. Hanging on to something that is gone is not good for anybody. It will be especially painful. It'll make it painful for you and everybody watching you. And if you have children, it'll make it painful for the children. And it's a mess, and it's going to end anyway. And now you're just wasting precious time. We all know people like this, that they stay too long in the relationship. They stay too long in the job. They don't have boundaries. They stay in confusion. They drag it out for years. And then this becomes toxic and people get abused. It becomes an abusive, toxic situation when you should have just cut ties, cut boundaries, and been done. And, people have many excuses for not doing that. And, we're all guilty of that. I am guilty of that as well. But looking back, I think about the wasted time and the opportunities that were wasted. And that's no joke, because your life can literally kind of go before you. Your life can kind of just, there's only a set amount of time, and you're running out of time. Asking spirit guides daily for help on how to handle the situation, constantly consulting your intuition, your instincts. There are certain situations that we cannot see clearly, especially when you're in the middle of a situation. So not asking everybody and their brother and the person at the bus stop, but asking somebody who you trust, somebody who you look towards sort of as a mentor, you trust their advice, and asking your spirit guides to send you signs on what to do. And sometimes the signs don't come till the next day, or maybe a day or two later. But if you consistently ask for them, they will come. And it's just important to remember what inspires you and feeds your soul, because if your soul wants to move on, it means that this situation that you're in isn't feeding your soul anymore. So now you have to go back and look and say, okay, what feeds my soul, and how can I go towards that in the best way possible? And, it doesn't mean you don't have moments that are sad. You will, but you have to look those moments in the face and realize that the feeling will pass, and the new opportunities do come in. And that's exciting. That's when you can get excited for the new opportunities, because, that is the circle of life, right? That's how it works. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Danny. What are your thoughts?
Okay. So Reverend Christina, that I really appreciate you lifting up how there's purpose in moving on. There's absolute purpose in it. And when preparing for today, and when connecting with spirit about moving on, because God knows spirit and the ancestors have helped me to move on at numerous times, helped me through my willfulness when I was resistant in different spaces in terms of struggling to move on. But at the core of it is alignment. Like, the core of moving on is getting into alignment and making sure that we are as aligned as we possibly can be. What came through as well is some of the things, one of the reasons why, and this is where like connecting with spirit and intuition, and as you were describing our guides is so important, is because God and our ancestors and spirit, they know what we need more than we, very often more than we do. And what we think what we need mentally very often is, or logically, is disconnected from what our souls know that we need spiritually, in terms of like from our soul. And the thing is, from a mental perspective or from like a logical perspective, at one moment in time, a situation, an opportunity, a space really could have helped us to be in alignment. Like we might have actually, those situations or relationships might have actually helped us to get into alignment and to be aligned. But then because of our growth, as you were describing, once we grow, what we need to be aligned then changes. And the thing is, because it's, well, wait a minute, I was aligned. This helped me to get into alignment. So forever and a day, this is alignment for me. And it's like, and they're just like, oh God, please. Like they're just, our ancestors and our guides are like, please just let go of the wheel. You're going to end up in a ditch. Just let us lead. And so when we do allow for ourselves to move on, even if it feels uncomfortable, it allows for us to get to the next space that we're meant to be in. And those opportunities, those relationships, those people are waiting for us, and they're waiting for us, and we are waiting for them as well. And the thing is, our alignment and other people's alignment could actually be dependent on us as well. So while we're holding on to, this dry piece of driftwood that we think is just the be all and end all, they're just like, okay, there's a lush tree with sap waiting for you, and there are people waiting for you to enjoy it, and you're holding on to this little, petrified piece of wood. Like, please help us help you. And that is how allowing for them to get us to where we need to be in our next space can be so empowering. And there's this song by Lauryn Hill, and sometimes Spirit allows for song lyrics to come through, and it's that When It Hurts So Bad. That's the name of the song from Lauryn Hill's first album from like 20 years ago, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And in the lyrics, she says, "What you want might make you cry. What you need might pass you by if you don't catch it. And what you need, ironically, will turn out what you want to be if you just let it." So the thing that God and Spirit has for us literally can be exactly what our heart's desire is, but we just have to get out of our own way, and we have to allow for ourselves to be led and not think that we have it all. Because even if we know that we do, we know, even if at moments we might behave like we do, we don't. We know that we don't. In terms of why sometimes moving on can be difficult, it's kind of like once we find that good thing, and once we find like that one good piece of fruit that we like, or that one snack, or that one thing that works for us, we can kind of psych ourselves out into believing that nothing else will taste as good as this thing. Like there are no other snacks, no other pieces of fruit, nothing in this universe that will compare to this one experience that I've had. And God is just like, okay, I spent time 7 days, like creating this thing. We've got more if you let it, And when we allow for these new experiences and new things to come into our lives, it can just be incredible. And sometimes we become tethered to situations and people, and not to say that people are tools, but the circumstances, like the opportunities, the relationships, they are all, especially when they are, as you were describing in terms of contract, we're meant to be in each other's lives. It is meant, it's going to be written, like it'll be written like in a synastry chart, like that we might get from Reverend Christina. It'll be in numerology, like the numbers will align. And instead of focusing on the life contract and what we're meant to accomplish and what we're meant to do, we focus on the avenues that were sent to us in order to get the work done. So our focus now is no longer on the work. Our focus is on the how. And like God has a lot of ways for us to be able to get this work done. And it's unfair to the folks who are meant to come across our paths if we are unwilling to move. That's, on us. on me, I should say. I'll personalize that because I have been very guilty at times. And also this concept of ego of like, I have to make it work. I have to prove to myself or prove to whomever who's probably not even watching that I can make this thing work. And while we're trying to prove that we can make something work, folks are moving on with their lives and aligning in with their own contracts and with their own work that they're meant to do. And it's it's fruitless, and we'll just end up spinning our wheels. And the thing is, sometimes it's difficult to move on because we have an unrealistic understanding of what other people's lives are. So we sometimes might compare ourselves to other people and compare our own lives to other people. And the thing is, we don't know the first thing about what another person's going through, but we like make comparisons and think, well, what if, so I'm moving on from a situation and other people are not moving on from theirs. Is there something wrong with me where I have to move on to something else? And it's just that way of rethinking and rewiring. There might be folks who might wish that they could move on to another opportunity or another space or travel or do something different, but they just might not be able to. And they're making the best of what they're doing, of their situations. So it is that sense of gratitude will allow for us to live in the present moment where we are and allow for the changes that are meant to happen in our lives. Because if we allow for those changes to happen, they can be beautiful and miraculous. And in terms of like the how to move on, one of the things that has been of support and help to me is to remember that in terms of contract, our lives are planned out already to a certain extent. Now, as Pastor Ivy teaches us, some things are up to like free will. So free will is at work in some things, and other things, some things are meant, some things are destiny charted. And if we look at the totality of our lives and not just the individual, or like if we look at the whole book and not just a chapter, Spirit had come through to me a few months ago and said, your life is a whole book. It's not just a chapter. And they said, like, what kind of boring book would it be if you just had one chapter of a book? Like, that's pretty sad. So that has helped me and allowed for me to realize that whatever I might be imagining for myself and what I might not be able to see is actually there. It's written. I'm just not meant to see it just yet. And to have faith in what we see now is not all that there is, because literally where I am right now is like 180 degrees from where I was like a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, I never would have thought that I could feel the way that I feel right now. And I mean, I kind of knew it was possible, but at the time, in that being present in that moment, I didn't know that it could. But here I am. So this is a reminder to me the next time I might wonder, okay, but what if it is time for me to move on? I'm going to ask Spirit to remind me of how I feel in this moment. Like, remember when you didn't think that you could feel the way that you do right now. And our plan is not best. Like, our plan is, if there is a recipe with 20 steps, ours is like 3 steps and that's it. Like, it's not, we don't have the capacity to make the thing that's most delicious. Spirit does, and leave it up to Spirit to be able to lead us in that way. In terms of the numbers, and I appreciate you lifting up like the energy that's with us at one moment of time in our lives may not be the energy that's with us at another moment in time of our lives. And that really is reflective in our like numerology chart, especially with like pinnacle cycle numbers and period numbers. There are certain periods of our lives where there's numeric energy that's really deeply present with us. And that numeric energy is with us to help us through that part of our life contract. And if at a moment, like especially if, let's say, for example, if a person's first pinnacle cycle number, the first 29 years of a person's life, the energy of like 7, of being introspective and very spiritual is like a part of their chart. But then in their second pinnacle cycle, that next 9-year cycle, the number 4 is really present, then that is an opportunity and a time when a person's meant to get to work. So it's kind of like how that might play out in a person's life is the first part of, portion of their lives is making meaning of the world and being introspective and reflective and going inward. Then at a certain point, it's like, okay, I need to get to work and I need to work hard and I need to accomplish things and I need to make a plan and stick with it. That is to ensure that we fulfill our life's purpose and we're not doing anything wrong, especially if we feel differently. Like the thing about with numerology in our charts is that we can sometimes feel as though we are living separate lives. Like it almost literally can feel like we are living multiple lives in one lifetime. And it's because the energy that's with us is so potent and it's designed to help us in that way. And I'll quickly just share some of the numbers that are, and Reverend Christina, as you described, like the planets having high and low polarity, the numbers have the same. And some of the numbers, the energy with like the numbers 1, 5, and 11 are really helpful when we call upon them to move on when we need to. Like that number 1, that energy of being willing to move full force and to be a trailblazer and to move forward when we need to. That's the numeric energy of like number 1, of being willing to do what needs to be done. And it's kind of like that mind over matter kind of energy. And it is, my heart might be a little tender right now, but I know what I need to do. And like the numeric energy of number 1, whether a person, that number follows us or whether a person might have 1s in their chart, that energy can help us to see the big picture and allow for us to do what needs to be done while still recognizing that there still might be some care that has to, or some self-care that has to happen. Also the number 5, I know we've spoken about the number 5. Another number 5 is in following you, Christina. It's in my chart. I love it. It is that number of freedom and liberation. And it is that number of being free and healing and getting into alignment and being willing to be detached. Like it's like that detachment number. And being willing to be a bit spontaneous and it's kind of like the pivot number as well. It's like, even if our plan might be to go 3 blocks up and take a right, that number 5 energy gives us what we need to say, you know what, I'm going to take a different route and I'll get there and I know that I will be fine. And I'll ask for that my guides be with me to make sure that I'm not in harm's way. And the number 11 as well, interestingly. So the number 11 is probably the most spiritually charged number in numerology. And that is the number where information spiritually comes at us from all directions. So for people who who see 1111 often, feel connected to the number 11, if the number 11 is in their chart in any capacity, this is that energy of, okay, I'm just sitting here minding my business, I'm doing a puzzle, and all of a sudden I'm getting all these spiritual downloads. And the numbers follow you. And then, like, if you have clairaudience, as Pastor Ivy teaches us about the clairs, all of a sudden you're hearing messages. That is spirit. It's like, you're not going to get away in any way, shape, or form. Just give it up, surrender, and just say, okay, tell me what I have to do. It's kind of like the number 11 energy is in one of our mediumship classes, Pastor Ivy described that the movie Ghost. And when Whoopi Goldberg is in Patrick Swayze is keeping Whoopi Goldberg up at night, and he's like, I'm Henry VIII, I am. That's the number 11 energy. That is, you're not getting away in any way, shape, or form. You might turn the numbers off. You might turn the radio down in terms of the lyrics. The numbers will follow you. The information will get to you in some way, shape, or form. And God bless trying to get away from it, because you won't. It won't. So that is the way that spirit has come through in preparing for today.
So I actually saw 1111 today, noticed it, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I haven't seen that in a long time. So that's interesting that you brought that up. I just want to remind people that you can post questions, donations, and prayers. I appreciate that you were talking about the cycles of numerology, because really it's the same in astrology. Some years are crisis years, And some years are living your life years, and then other years are opportunity years. And, they come in cycles. But one thing that I have noticed, and I feel like, just like what you said, I feel like I have lived multiple lives in one lifetime. And I think maybe that comes from embracing moving on and accepting karmic endings, because when we talk about life contract, things like that, we're talking about karma. And once that karma is worked out, we have to move on. And it's really weird. I don't exactly know what the reasoning is, but it's almost like I can't remember a lot of my life, simply because, I don't know, maybe because I'm just in the now. I mean, I remember bits and pieces, but I know people who can, remember days from high school and like can recite things. And I'm like, I don't remember that stuff, even like 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I remember certain bits and pieces, but it's almost like, I've lived multiple lives and I can only get a little bit of each one. So I always think that that's very interesting. I don't know if other people comment if you feel like that, because I don't know if I'm the only one that feels like that, but I have always really felt like that. Astrology too will show you where you're getting in your own way as well. If a certain planet is coming, and I can remember before I knew astrology, like really knew it, fighting, the energies, fighting my feelings, fighting my intuition, knowing where I was supposed to go. Um, it was, it's futile. Like you can't fight that. You can try, you can waste all your time, but like you said, that's where the free will comes in. But the destiny charted stuff, it's going to happen. It's just, it's going to be on a little longer of a timeline, but it's going to happen. If you insist on that this job pays me more than that job pays me, so I can't leave. Well, eventually the universe is just going to throw you out of that job, and you're going to have to move on anyway. So you might as well be under your terms. You might as well just accept that this is no longer for me. I need to do something else, and I need to get busy right now figuring it out. Otherwise, it will be a surprise, and then you're not prepared. And then, so we do have some wiggle room in there, not a ton, but we do have some wiggle room in there. And sometimes things are just surprises, especially in those crisis years. You didn't think that something was coming, but here it is, and now you have to deal with it. And when there's a crisis, and I know we've talked about this a lot on our channel, on our services, when there's a crisis, there's nothing like a crisis to bring you right into the moment, because you have to deal with it. Like you can't be, in your mind way over here. You have to be right there, right in that moment, dealing with it and trying to get to the next moment. And yes, a lot of these moments are going to be uncomfortable. A lot of these, and that's the thing that I think I personally work on, is trying to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that if there's anything in life you should be working on, it should be that. And nobody likes that lesson, right? Nobody likes to be, uncomfortable. I hate being uncomfortable. I hate it. I have a class I'm in right now, and I'm uncomfortable, and it sucks. But I'm going to push myself to do it. So, that's just like one of the things you just have to do. Because you're never going to level up if you don't put in the effort, make yourself uncomfortable, take a chance, take a risk. I see somebody on TikTok says, I can remember bits and pieces. I can't remember bits and pieces either. It's nice to know I'm not alone. Yeah, I think it's the weirdest thing. We should talk about it more. I don't know. I would be so interested in seeing what Ivy thinks about that. But like, I really have very fragmented memories of my life, even like as a child and stuff. A lot of it is just gone. And my friends can remember things and I can't. It's very weird. I don't know if it has something to do with the spiritual piece. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I appreciate that, Cheryl Ann. And somebody else, let's see. Duchess Duchess Shorten says she sees 1111 all the time. That's good. Then you know that spirit is behind you and behind what is going on. Yeah, it's really important to pay attention to those messages. In the fives, you were mentioning the fives. I love the five energy. So when I think of the five energy, the detachment, I think of Uranus. And right now, Leos are going through like a Uranus square. So we're feeling that detachment right now. I have to say, I really wish I could live with this detachment energy because it is the best. It's freedom. It's not that you don't care. You're just detached from over caring. And that's what I really appreciate about a Uranus transit. So even though I've had a couple crisis years, I do appreciate the energy of Uranus coming in and shaking things up in my life and allowing me detachment because I am a Pisces moon. I'm a Cancer rising, a Leo sun, and I tend to I just overfeel and over passionate sometimes. So in a couple years like this where I am detached, I am very grateful. So I see buttered biscuits and trees says, yeah, me too. It's like something, is it like something with my brain? I forgot everything, even straight after someone. Yeah, like I feel like that too. Like I remember bits and pieces. It's so weird. Like there has to be something to that. I'm so curious as to what Ivy has to say about that. What else do we talk about? Yeah, we live in ego. I heard a prediction from a famous astrologer today saying that when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we're going to, this is very hard for us to believe right now, but we're going to not be so concentrated on status symbols. For instance, like carrying around a Coach bag or something like that. It's not going to be as focused on that. And that happens in 2023 and 2024. I'm so curious about how ego is going to change with that because we are an ego-based society. All humans have egos. Well, most humans have egos. And it should be interesting to see if we can get past our ego and, make choices based on faith and love and respecting other people. So that'll be very, very interesting. Do we have any comments? Let's see. I'm going to look on the YouTube comments. So Me Love 716 said, Roots Revival and the mini classes helped me through an incredible breakup last summer with a friend of 30 years. Oh, I've been through that. That is the worst. And thank you for always speaking what I needed to help me through at the right time. So one thing like that I think, especially like with a friend who's been around for 30 years or consequently a husband who's been around for 20 years, what happens is you start vibrating at different levels. And one of you is, and not to say that it's you or them or whatever, but you're vibrating at different levels. One's vibrating here, one's vibrating here. It's no longer matching. So the universe is saying, okay, that karma is served. Now you have to vibrate higher. Now you have to level up. And unfortunately, and I know Reverend Ivy talks about this all the time, you can't bring everyone with you. Not everyone can come. And that is just a fact. Let's see. So yeah, and that's true. Like, I don't know, like it seems like whenever I speak to Reverend Danny or Pastor Ivy, I hear what I need to hear.
Yeah.
Mel, love. Sorry, go ahead.
If I may add just as well, like the thing with the breakup of like with a friend, one of the things that like when Pastor Ivy teaches about in mediumship is how relationships and friendships, we might see ourselves either being distanced from them, or it's almost kind of like, well, not like it is, our guides and our ancestors move people away from us. And there comes a point where, especially with our own spiritual elevation, when we become literally incapable of accepting and tolerating certain behaviors before that we might have excused away and made excuses for, and it's, oh, well, my friend has gone through so much, so therefore that's why they behave and react in this way. But then we come to the point of where it's just like, well, wait, I'm worthy of effort to not do that. And that is that realization really can help us to protect ourselves, and unfortunately can cause distance within friends as well. So that appreciate Me Love 716 for lifting up how we were helpful.
Yeah, that's so hard, and that many people go through that, and because there's nothing worse than feeling like betrayed by a friend. You know what I mean? Somebody who you thought was going to be there. There really is no words for that. Okay, so Me Love 716 says it's difficult to not feel like we have to prove ourselves or to someone else. That is a great obstacle. Amen to the words you're giving, Reverend Danny. So yeah, I appreciated that too. We sometimes we want to prove things, but really what matters is what we know in our hearts and what spirit knows. You have any comments on that, Danny?
I mean, I appreciate Me Love 716 for lifting that up, and Reverend Christina, just you, kind of like affirming how it's like God and our ancestors, they have what they have. They have what they have for us, and sometimes it's like with these unrealistic expectations about what we might think or feel that our elders or our ancestors might be expecting of us. But what's so wild is when they become ancestors and they are in unconditional love and universal truth, they might, especially if they might either communicate through us through dreams, or if we get a reading and receive a message from them, they don't want us in those situations. They might even come back and say, if I had it all to do it all over again, would I have done the same thing? And we have nothing to prove in that way. Our ancestors don't want us suffering. Like, our happiness and joy does not have to be there doesn't have to be suffering, unnecessary suffering that comes prior to it. Sometimes in our life contract, we agree to go through things, but we don't have to intentionally harm ourselves to the point of being a different version of ourselves just for the sake of getting to a piece of joy. They don't want that for us. And Mommy always said there's no, God doesn't smile on us when we allow for ourselves to be mistreated. She's like, there's no nobility in that. Like, get that out of your head. And I've tried to hold on to that as I've gotten older too.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. And that's where the boundaries, Brittany Dalton said, you're right, you cannot be friends. We failed to put up boundaries, consequences. Yeah, for sure. And you learn as you get older. Like you said, we tolerate certain things. Pastor Ivy did chime in and said, I have very few memories. So very interesting. And she said, or memory of directions. That's true too. I don't remember directions either.
Not a one. More than two turns.
We need like a study or something. Let's see. Yeah, and Jill says she has very few memories as well. So my TikTokers were saying the same thing. So yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I always feel like there's so many people out there who are like, oh yeah, I remember, and I'm like, or if I see people from high school and they're like commenting on things that happened, and I'm like, how do you remember that? Like, it's just gone. It's not in my brain.
Yeah. Christina, 1000%. There are some things that I wish I could recall, but I simply cannot. And I fake the phone time because I'm just, oh no.
Yes, and Sobol says, yes, that is so me too. I cannot remember anything. My memory is really bad. I would like to hear what Ivy's take is on it too. Yeah. And Ivy, Pastor Ivy says, memory and confusion is part of the psychic medium curse for sure. So that's interesting because because like it is so close to that, like it's probably like close to the same part of the brain too. That's interesting. Okay, and Brittany Ingram says, Reverend Danny Johnson, hi, I'm so excited I caught this Sunday session. What is the significance? Oh, okay, let's see it going here. Thank you for tuning in. And all right, so I think we're just gonna go to any last comments, Reverend Danny?
Well, there was that question of the significance of saying birthday, month, and day multiple times a year. So I will say that there is definite connection between date of birth and your numerology chart. And I would love if you feel so moved to join us in our numerology class that's starting on Tuesday. If you would love to join us, there is significance, and especially depending upon the numbers and whether or not they're double digits as well. There's definite. So to answer your question, 1000%, yes.
That's so cool. I probably wouldn't even notice if I saw that.
I know, and I'll probably text you, Christina.
Yeah. I still see sevens all the time though, and that's my life path. So all right. Should we move to prayers?
Sure.
Okay. So and just one more comment. Long live Bengal says, I always see my birthday on the time and everywhere I go. That's interesting. Oh, and somebody else said, interesting. I thought for sure I was getting early dementia. Yes, we are all, we all feel that way, but no. Okay, so, all right, let's go into prayer. We want to thank Spirit for allowing us all to be here together tonight to talk about moving on and, the best way possible to do that. Want to, before we say any other prayers, I just want to lift up the people in the Ukraine. And Jill Marie says, I'd like to lift up the people of the Ukraine, prayers for their strength and courage and safety. Thank you, Jill. And Subal, I want to say a prayer for my friend Micah and her family. They just lost a very young loved one to suicide, so please lift them up in prayer. So we want to lift them up, their family, help them with healing, and help them to receive confirmation that everything is okay on the other side. Okay, and Danny, do you have any other prayer requests?
I do. We'd love to lift up Harper, who lost his brother and uncle in a very short period of time, not long ago. Prayers for his family and for his healing. And prayers also for the family of Stephanie and Stella, the mother and daughter who died in the house fire on early Valentine's Day morning. Prayers for their family, prayers for Stella and Stephanie, and for their families' road to healing, which is unfathomable, lifting up the family.
All right. I just want to say a prayer for my friend Cammie and her husband, who's been in the hospital since November. May their family receive healing and her husband make it home. All right. It was wonderful talking with you, as always, Reverend Danny.
Likewise. Oh, Reverend Christina, I always love our conversations. And it's excited for all that is to come as well with our discussions. My Leo sister, you always know.
Thank you. And likewise. Okay, so I am going to try to figure out how to end my TikTok here. And thank you everybody for joining us. And I'm sorry if I didn't get to your comments. I am new at TikTok. So thank you for being patient with me.
You
All
got
right.
this.
Thank you. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.